The massive crystal ship moved through space like a deadly jewel. Admiral Zexthor stood on the command bridge, his tall purple body glowing with the soft light that all Vorthak possessed. His mind connected directly to the ship's systems, feeling every sensor and weapon as if they were part of his own body. This was how the Vorthak had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Perfect unity between mind and machine. "Admiral, we have found something interesting," Commander Velshan said, his thoughts flowing directly into Zexthor's consciousness. The Vorthak did not need to speak with words. Their minds shared information faster than any computer. Zexthor focused his attention on the sensor data. A small blue planet orbited a yellow star in the outer rim of the galaxy. The planet showed signs of life, but the technology readings were primitive. Very primitive. They still use chemical rockets, Velshan's thoughts carried amusement, and their most powerful weapons are nuclear devices. They have not even achieved faster-than-light travel. Admiral Zexthor studied the data with growing interest. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Vorthak had never found a species this backward that had also achieved planetary unity. Most primitive species were still fighting among themselves when the Vorthak arrived. But these humans, as their intercepted communications called them, had something unusual. They had reached their moon and built space stations, yet they still fought wars with metal projectiles. Should we simply destroy them? Velshan asked. It was standard procedure. Planets that offered no strategic value or advanced technology were typically wiped clean and resettled with more useful species. No, Zexthor decided. These humans might make interesting slaves. Their planet has good resources and they seem to have some basic engineering skills. We will offer them the chance to surrender. On the distant blue planet, Dr. Taemin Park was working late in his laboratory when every radio telescope on Earth suddenly started screaming warnings. The signals were impossible to ignore. Something massive had just appeared at the edge of their solar system. Taemin grabbed his phone and called General Hyunwoo Kim, the head of Earth's Unified Defense Council. "General, you need to see this. We have multiple objects approaching Earth. They are not asteroids or comets. They are artificial." Within hours, the news spread across the planet. President So-Young Lee called an emergency meeting with world leaders. The objects were clearly ships, enormous crystalline vessels that made Earth's largest space stations look like toys. As the ships moved closer, their size became terrifying. The smallest one was larger than any city on Earth. How many? President Lee asked during the emergency video conference. 47 ships, General Kim reported. The largest one is over 50 kilometers long. Our satellites can barely track them all. Dr. Taemin Park had been chosen to lead Earth's first contact team because of his work in communications and linguistics. He had spent years developing protocols for meeting alien life, but he had never imagined it would happen like this, with a massive fleet appearing suddenly in Earth's orbit. The aliens did not wait long to make contact. A beam of energy struck every major communication satellite simultaneously, and suddenly every television, radio, and computer screen on Earth showed the same image. A tall, purple-skinned being stood in what appeared to be a crystal chamber. Its eyes glowed with inner light, and when it spoke, the words came in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, and every other major language on Earth simultaneously. "Primitive beings of the third planet," the alien said, its voice cold and commanding. "I am Admiral Zexthor of the Vorthak Dominion. Your world now belongs to the Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons. Cease all military activities. Prepare to accept Vorthak rule. If you comply, your lives will be spared and you will serve the Empire as workers. If you resist, your planet will be cleansed of all life." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. President Lee stared at the blank screen. "Did that actually happen?" General Kim nodded grimly. "Our defense satellites are still functional. The alien ships are holding position in high orbit. They could attack at any time, but they seem to be waiting." Dr. Taemin Park felt his heart racing. "They called us primitive. They think we are easy to defeat." "Maybe we are," President Lee said quietly. "General, what are our options?" General Kim had been studying the alien ships for hours. Their technology is far beyond ours. Those ships don't use any propulsion system we understand. They just move. Our nuclear weapons might scratch their hulls, but I doubt it. "So we surrender?" President Lee asked. "To who?" General Kim replied. "They want complete surrender from the entire planet. But we do not have a world government. Who has the authority to surrender for all of humanity? This was the problem the Vorthak had not considered. In their 3,000 years of conquest, they had always faced unified species or single-planet governments. Earth had over 200 nations, thousands of different cultures, and billions of people who had never agreed on anything in their entire history. Dr. Taemin Park realized something important. They gave us 72 hours. Why? If they can destroy us easily, why wait? Maybe they want us to surrender, General Kim suggested. Dead slaves are not very useful. Or maybe, Taemin said slowly, they have never faced a species like us before. Admiral Zexthor waited in his command center, expecting the human surrender within hours. Every other species in the galaxy had surrendered quickly when faced with Vorthak might. The longest any planet had held out was 6 hours, and that was only because their government was hiding in deep bunkers. But as the first day passed, then the second, no surrender came. Instead, the Vorthak intercepted thousands of communications between human governments. They were not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight. This is impossible. Commander Velshan projected his confusion to the Admiral. They can see our ships. They must understand they cannot win. Admiral Zexthor studied the intercepted human communications with growing bewilderment. The humans were not acting like any species the Vorthak had ever encountered. They were not unified. Different human governments were making different plans. Some wanted to surrender, others wanted to fight, and still others wanted to hide. But strangest of all, many humans seemed more angry than afraid. Their communications spoke of freedom and independence as if these concepts were more important than survival itself. Admiral, Velshan reported, we are detecting massive movement on the planet's surface. They are mobilizing their militaries. Admiral Zexthor felt the first stirring of something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Uncertainty. These humans were going to fight. Against impossible odds, with primitive weapons, they were actually going to fight. Perhaps we should begin bombardment immediately, Velshan suggested. No, Admiral Zexthor decided. Let them try. It will be interesting to see what these primitive creatures think they can accomplish. He had no idea that this decision would lead to the downfall of an empire. When the 72 hours ended, Admiral Zexthor began what he called a demonstration of force. 3 smaller Vorthak ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, their crystal hulls shimmering with energy shields. They moved toward major military bases, planning to destroy them quickly and efficiently. The first ship approached Seoul Air Base in South Korea. Captain Jin-Ho Choi watched from his hidden position as the alien vessel landed in the center of the runway. The ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a massive purple crystal that seemed to bend light around itself. Remember, Jin-Ho whispered into his radio to his team. They expect us to use energy weapons like lasers or plasma guns. They do not know we still use bullets and explosives. Jin-Ho had been a Special Forces soldier for 15 years. He had fought in conflicts around the world, but never against aliens. Still, an enemy was an enemy, and every enemy had weaknesses. The Vorthak ship opened, and purple-skinned soldiers emerged. They moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others were thinking. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy, and their armor looked like it was made of living crystal. Jin-Ho counted 20 aliens. They spread out across the airfield, clearly planning to destroy the human aircraft and buildings. What they did not expect was the buried explosives that Jin-Ho's team had planted during the night. Now, Jin-Ho whispered. The explosions erupted from underground, sending chunks of concrete and metal flying into the air. The Vorthak soldiers were thrown to the ground, their perfect coordination shattered by surprise and pain. Their energy shields flickered and failed as debris struck them from below. Jin-Ho and his team opened fire with conventional assault rifles. The bullets struck the alien armor and, to Jin-Ho's amazement, punched right through. The Vorthak had never faced kinetic weapons. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams, not metal projectiles. Within minutes, the alien patrol was destroyed. Jin-Ho approached one of the fallen soldiers and examined the crystal armor. It was incredibly advanced, but it had one fatal flaw. It was designed to fight other Vorthak species with similar technology. Meanwhile, in a laboratory in Seoul, Dr. Yoonji Kim was studying pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from the crashed ship. She was a materials scientist who specialized in crystalline structures, and the Vorthak technology fascinated her. "Look at this," she told her colleague, Engineer Dongmin Yang, as she examined a piece of alien equipment under a microscope. "The entire structure is based on harmonic resonance. These crystals vibrate at very specific frequencies." Dongmin leaned closer. "What does that mean?" "It means they have a weakness," Yunji said excitedly. "If we can generate the right sound waves, we might be able to disrupt their technology entirely." Working through the night, Yunji and Dongmin developed a prototype sonic weapon. It was crude, basically a powerful speaker that could generate specific frequencies. But when they tested it on captured Vorthak equipment, the results were dramatic. The alien devices simply fell apart. Across the city, communications officer Su Bin Han was intercepting Vorthak transmissions. She did not understand their language, but she noticed something strange about their communication patterns. "They are all connected," she told her supervisor. "Every message goes to every ship at the same time. They do not have individual communication channels. What does that mean?" her supervisor asked. "It means they think as a group," Subin explained. "But it also means that if we can disrupt their communications, we can disrupt all of them at once." The second alien landing took place outside Moscow, where the Vorthak expected to face desperate resistance from primitive humans with crude weapons. Instead, they found something that confused them completely. The humans were not where the aliens expected them to be. Colonel Pavel Volkov had studied every alien invasion movie ever made, and he knew that the worst thing to do was meet the aliens in open battle. Instead, he ordered his forces to abandon their bases and fight from hidden positions in the forests and cities. The Vorthak soldiers landed and found empty military bases. They searched for humans to fight but found only empty buildings and silence. Then the attacks began. A sniper's bullet would strike from a building window. By the time the aliens turned to return fire, the sniper was gone. Explosives would detonate under their feet as they walked down streets. Human soldiers would appear, fire their weapons, and disappear again before the aliens could coordinate a response. The Vorthak had never encountered guerrilla warfare. Their entire military doctrine was based on facing other organized armies in direct combat. They did not know how to fight an enemy that refused to stand and fight. But the most important discovery came from an unexpected source. Dr. Minseo Park was a neuroscientist studying brain activity in her laboratory when the alien invasion began. As she monitored her own brainwaves during the stress of the attacks, she noticed something unusual. Human brains produced a constant background of electrical activity, what she called neural static. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and seemed to have no purpose. But when she compared it to intercepted data about Vorthak brain activity, she realized something incredible. The aliens' brains worked like perfectly tuned radios, broadcasting and receiving thoughts with crystal clarity. But human brains were like radio stations with terrible reception, full of static and interference. "We are not psychically gifted," Minseo explained to the Emergency Science Council. "We are psychically noisy. Our brains jam their mental connections just by being near them." This explained why the Vorthak coordination had failed during close combat. When human soldiers got within a few hundred meters of the aliens, the Vorthak started making mistakes. Their perfect teamwork began to break down. Admiral Zexthor stared at the reports from the planet's surface with growing disbelief. 3 ships destroyed, 47 soldiers dead, and the humans were not surrendering, they were fighting harder. "How is this possible?" Commander Velshan projected his confusion. "They are using primitive weapons. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. They are not fighting like civilized beings," Admiral Zexthor replied. "They hide, they run. They attack from behind. This is not honorable combat." The Admiral had spent his entire career fighting other advanced species who followed recognized rules of warfare. Ships fought ships in space. Armies met armies on battlefields. When one side was clearly defeated, they surrendered. These humans seemed to have no concept of honor or proper military conduct. "Should we begin orbital bombardment?" Velshan asked. "We could destroy their major cities from space." Admiral Zexthor considered this. Orbital bombardment would certainly end the human resistance, but it would also destroy most of the planet's infrastructure and kill the potential slave population. The Emperor would not be pleased if Zexthor returned with a dead world. No, the Admiral decided. Send more ground forces. These humans cannot resist indefinitely. But even as he gave the order, Admiral Zexthor felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Doubt. The humans were supposed to be primitive and weak. They were supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. Instead, they were teaching the galaxy something it had forgotten during 3,000 years of Vorthak rule. They were teaching it how to fight back. In hidden bunkers around the world, human scientists and soldiers worked frantically to understand their enemy. They studied captured alien technology, developed new weapons, and shared information faster than ever before in human history. For the first time since the Vorthak Empire began, an invasion was not going according to plan. The aliens had expected fear and submission. Instead, they found determination and defiance. And in the depths of space on planets scattered across the galaxy, other enslaved species began to hear whispers of impossible news. Someone was fighting the Vorthak. Someone was actually fighting back. The humans did not know it yet, but their resistance was already beginning to crack the foundations of an empire that had seemed unshakable for 3 millennia. Every bullet fired, every bomb exploded, every small victory against impossible odds sent a message across the stars. The message was simple. The Vorthak could be beaten, and that message, more than any weapon, would prove to be the beginning of the Empire's doom. News of the human resistance spread through the galaxy like wildfire. For 3,000 years, no species had successfully fought back against the Vorthak Empire. Most worlds surrendered within hours of seeing the crystal fleets appear in their skies. But the humans had been fighting for 2 weeks, and they were winning small battles every day. On the prison world of Kepler-7, an old alien named Thrix whispered the impossible news to his fellow slaves. The humans destroyed another Vorthak ship yesterday. They captured it and flew it away. His cellmate, a reptilian being called Kess, shook his head. Impossible. No one can fly Vorthak ships. They require psychic connection. That is what makes it so amazing, Thrix replied. The humans cannot connect psychically to anything. But somehow they made the ship work anyway. Back on Earth, Colonel Woojin Park stood inside the captured Vorthak vessel, trying to understand how the aliens had made such a terrible mistake. The ship had landed to attack a military base in Japan. But the Vorthak crew had not expected the base to be empty, and they certainly had not expected the underground tunnels that led directly beneath their landing site. Woojin's team had used those tunnels to plant explosives under the ship's landing legs. When the charges detonated, the ship had tilted sideways, trapping most of the crew inside. The few aliens who escaped were quickly overwhelmed by conventional weapons. "How do we fly this thing?" asked Dr. Haiwan Kim, the engineer who had been assigned to study the captured ship. She ran her hands over the crystal control panels, but nothing responded to her touch. "The aliens connect to it with their minds," Woojin said, "but we do not have psychic abilities." Haiwan had been studying captured Vorthak technology for days, and she had noticed something important. The ship responds to electrical signals from their brains. If we can generate the right electrical patterns, maybe we can fool it into thinking we are Vorthak. Working with a team of neuroscientists, Haiwan developed a crude neural interface. It was basically a helmet covered in electrodes that could generate electrical patterns similar to Vorthak brainwaves. When she put it on and touched the ship's controls, the crystal panels flickered to life. "It works," she shouted with excitement. "I can feel the ship's systems. It is like the ship is alive." The captured Vorthak vessel became humanity's first step into advanced technology. More importantly, it became a weapon that the aliens never saw coming. Admiral Zexthor was reviewing casualty reports when his ship's alarm suddenly screamed warnings. A Vorthak vessel was approaching at high speed, but something was wrong with its identification signals. "That is Scout Ship Velkara," Commander Velshan reported. "But I cannot sense the crew's minds. The psychic connection is strange." "Strange how?" Admiral Zexthor demanded. "It feels like static, like interference." The approaching ship suddenly accelerated beyond normal safety limits, heading directly for the Vorthak supply depot on the dark side of Earth's moon. Admiral Zexthor realized with horror what was happening. "The humans have captured one of our ships," he projected to his crew. "Stop them!" But it was too late. Colonel Woojin Park, wearing the crude neural interface helmet, piloted the stolen ship directly into the center of the alien supply depot. The crash and resulting explosion destroyed enough equipment and fuel to supply the entire invasion force for months. Emperor Kethmar received Admiral Zexthor's report with growing anger. The Emperor was over 400 years old and had ruled the galaxy for most of that time. He had conquered dozens of species and crushed hundreds of rebellions. He had never encountered anything like the humans, you are telling me. The Emperor's thoughts burned with fury. That primitive savages have destroyed a supply depot, captured our technology, and are still refusing to surrender? Yes, Your Magnificence, Admiral Zexthor replied carefully. They are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not fight with honor. They use deception and treachery. Then stop treating them with honor, Emperor Kethmar ordered. I am sending Admiral Raymoth with the 5th Fleet. End this embarrassment, immediately. Admiral Raymoth was known throughout the galaxy as the World Breaker. He had personally conquered 17 star systems and had never failed to crush resistance. His fleet consisted of 50 of the Empire's most powerful warships, crewed by veteran soldiers who had never known defeat. When news of the approaching fleet reached Earth, many human leaders despaired. General Hyun-woo Kim studied the sensor readings with a sinking heart. 50 ships, he told President So-young Lee. Each one larger than anything in the first wave. Our captured ship's computer says Admiral Raymoth has never lost a battle. But Dr. Young-mi Seo, a quantum physicist working with the Resistance, had been studying human brain activity and its effect on Vorthak technology. She had made a discovery that might change everything. We know that human brains interfere with Vorthak's psychic abilities, she explained to the Emergency Council. But what if we could amplify that interference? Young-mi had been working with captured alien technology to understand how Vorthak minds connected to their ships and weapons. She discovered that their entire fleet operated on a single psychic network. Every ship, every weapon, every system was connected through the minds of the crew. If we can broadcast human brainwave patterns at high power, she continued, we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet at once. The plan was desperate and dangerous. Corporal Jae-hyun Lee volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission, wearing captured Vorthak armor and carrying Young-mi's experimental device. He would infiltrate Admiral Raymoth's flagship and plant the neural disruptor at the center of the ship's psychic network. Jae-hyun had trained for special operations his entire military career, but nothing had prepared him for walking through the corridors of an alien warship. The Vorthak crew moved with perfect coordination, their minds linked in ways that no human could understand. But that perfect coordination also made them predictable. The aliens expected threats from outside their ship, not from within. They had never faced an enemy who could disguise themselves and move among them. Jae-hyun reached the ship's central command core without being detected. The psychic amplifier chamber was beautiful and terrifying, a crystal sphere surrounded by flowing energy that connected every Vorthak mind in the fleet. Jae-hyun placed Young-mi's device next to the central crystal and activated it. The effect was immediate and devastating. Human brainwave patterns amplified 1,000-fold, flooded through the Vorthak psychic network. Every alien in the fleet suddenly experienced the chaotic, noisy thoughts of human consciousness. For beings who had lived their entire lives in perfect mental harmony, the experience was overwhelming. Ship systems failed as confused Vorthak lost connection with their technology. Weapons powered down as gunners could no longer coordinate their targeting. Navigation systems went offline as pilots lost their psychic link to their vessels. Admiral Raymoth felt his perfectly ordered mind filled with strange, alien thoughts. Human emotions, anger, fear, hope, defiance, crashed through his consciousness like a storm. For the first time in his 400-year life, he could not sense the minds of his crew. What is happening? He tried to project to his officers, but his thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. The 5th Fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy, drifted helplessly in space as their crews struggled to understand what had happened to them. Some ships crashed into each other as their pilots lost control. Others simply shut down completely as their systems failed. On planets across the galaxy, enslaved species watched their Vorthak overseers stumble and fall as the psychic feedback reached every corner of the Empire. For the first time in 3,000 years, the aliens seemed vulnerable. Resistance leader Bora Kim seized the moment. Using captured communication equipment, she began broadcasting instructions to every enslaved world in the galaxy. The Vorthak can be beaten, her message spread through hyperspace. Use kinetic weapons, bullets, arrows, rocks. Their shields cannot stop them. Attack their crystal technology with sound waves. When you get close to them, their coordination fails. On 17 different worlds, uprisings began simultaneously. The Kelhari, aquatic beings who had been enslaved for centuries, used human-designed sonic weapons to shatter Vorthak underwater bases. The insectoid Thrixians employed guerrilla tactics that the aliens had never encountered. Emperor Kethamar felt his empire shaking for the first time in millennia. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Rebellions, defeated fleets, destroyed bases. And at the center of it all were the humans, the primitive species that was supposed to have been conquered in a single day. How? The Emperor raged at his advisors.
How can this be happening?
But none of his advisors had an answer. The Vorthak Empire had been built on the assumption that superior technology and psychic coordination would always triumph over primitive resistance. They had never considered that their greatest strength could become their greatest weakness. As news of Admiral Ramoth's defeat spread, something impossible began to happen. Species that had been enslaved for generations began to remember what freedom meant. The galaxy was waking up from 3,000 years of submission, and the humans, the noisy, chaotic, impossible humans, had shown them the way. The galaxy had not seen anything like it in 3,000 years. On world after world, species that had lived under Vorthak rule for centuries suddenly remembered that they had once been free. The human resistance had done more than defeat alien fleets. It had awakened something that the Empire thought was dead forever. On the water world of Aquarius Prime, the Kelhari moved through their underwater cities with new purpose. These dolphin-like beings had been forced to mine crystal formations from the ocean floor for Vorthak technology. Now armed with human-designed sonic weapons, they turned those same crystals into weapons of liberation. Kelhari engineer Splash of Moonlight activated the sonic disruptor that human resistance fighters had taught her people to build. The Vorthak underwater facility shook as its crystal walls began to crack and crumble. The alien guards, their psychic coordination already damaged by the neural static, could barely coordinate a defense. For our children who have never seen the surface, Splash of Moonlight called to her fellow rebels as they swarmed the collapsing base. Meanwhile, on the desert world of Kepler 9, the insectoid Thrixians emerged from the tunnels where they had hidden for generations. Their natural ability to work as a coordinated swarm had been suppressed by Vorthak mind control devices. But the human neural static had broken those controls. Queen worker Buzz in Harmony led 10,000 of her people in a coordinated assault on the planetary control center. The Thrixians moved like a living wave across the desert, using human guerrilla tactics combined with their natural teamwork. The confused Vorthak garrison, still reeling from the psychic feedback, could not mount an effective defense. But the most important battle was happening in space, where Captain Sung Ho Yang commanded humanity's first faster-than-light mission. His ship was a hybrid of human engineering and captured Vorthak technology, crewed by volunteers who knew they might never return to Earth. Proxima Station in sight, reported navigator Daesom Kim as they dropped out of hyperspace. The massive prison facility hung in the darkness between stars, holding thousands of humans captured during the early days of the invasion. But Seung-ho had not come just to rescue human prisoners. Intelligence reports suggested that Proxima Station held representatives from dozens of enslaved species, leaders who had been captured during failed rebellions over the centuries. Remember, Seung-ho told his crew, "We are not just rescuing prisoners. We are creating an alliance." The assault on Proxima Station became the first truly multi-species military operation in galactic history. Human soldiers fought alongside Kelhari swimmers, Thrixian warriors, and dozens of other species who had been waiting for this moment for generations. Dr. Ji Hee-kwan, working in a laboratory hidden beneath the ruins of Seoul, made a breakthrough that would change the course of the war. She had been studying Vorthak physiology using tissue samples from captured aliens, and she discovered something remarkable about their nervous systems. Their psychic abilities make them incredibly sensitive to specific electromagnetic frequencies, she explained to her research partner, Hyun-Soo Park. It is like they have no natural protection against certain types of neural interference. Working day and night, Ji-hai and Hyun-Soo developed what they called the neural disruptor, a weapon that specifically targeted Vorthak brain chemistry without affecting other species. Unlike the crude sonic weapons that had been used before, this device could disable Vorthak soldiers without permanent harm, while leaving their alien allies completely unaffected. "This changes everything," General Hyun-woo Kim said when he saw the weapon demonstrated. "We can now fight alongside our alien allies without worrying about friendly fire." But Emperor Kethamar was not finished. Faced with rebellions across his empire and the humiliating defeat of his finest fleet, the ancient ruler made a decision that would prove to be his greatest mistake. If they will not submit to the empire, he declared to his remaining admirals, then they will all die. Activate the planet killer weapons. The Worldbreaker array had not been used for over 2,000 years. These ancient weapons could sterilize entire solar systems, turning living worlds into dead rock. The Emperor had avoided using them because dead worlds provided no slaves or resources, but his pride had been wounded beyond reason. Admiral Morketh, the new commander of the Vorthak forces, received his orders with grim satisfaction. He had always believed that mercy was weakness. The humans and their alien allies wanted to fight. He would give them a war they would never forget. The first target was Kepler 442b, a colony world where humans and Thrixians had established a joint settlement. 2 million beings lived on the planet's surface when Admiral Morketh's fleet arrived. "Surrender, immediately or face complete destruction," the Admiral broadcast to the planet. The response came from Colony Commander Min Jae-son, a former South Korean diplomat who had been leading the settlement. "We are free beings on a free world. We do not recognize Vorthak authority. If you want our world, you will have to take it from our dead bodies." Admiral Morketh smiled coldly and gave the order to fire. The planet died in minutes. The Worldbreaker weapons turned the atmosphere into plasma and boiled the oceans away. Every living thing on Kepler 442b was reduced to ash in an instant. But Admiral Morketh had made a critical error in judgment. He thought that the destruction of Kepler 442b would terrify the rebels into submission. Instead, it proved to every species in the galaxy that the Vorthak would destroy anyone who sought freedom. The news of the colony's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light. On every enslaved world, beings who had been wavering between submission and rebellion suddenly understood that they had no choice. The Vorthak would kill them whether they resisted or not. Admiral Sun Woo Jang, commanding the newly formed Terran Liberation Fleet, received the news while preparing for an assault on a Vorthak stronghold. Her crew included humans, Kelhari, Thrixians, and representatives from 17 other species. When she announced what had happened to Kepler 442b, the bridge fell silent. "They killed everyone," she said quietly. 2 million people gone." The silence stretched for long moments. Then one by one, every being on the bridge stood up. Human, alien, young, old. They all rose to their feet in tribute to the dead. "They want to kill us all," said Kelhari Captain Ripple of Stars. "Then we have nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for," added Thrixian Warrior Prime Click of Determination, Admiral Sun Woo. Yang felt something she had never experienced before. The absolute unity of different species joined by a common cause. Humans fought for freedom because they had never known anything else, but these alien species fought for freedom because they remembered what slavery felt like. "Send a message to every rebel fleet in the galaxy," she ordered. "Tell them we are not just fighting for our worlds anymore. We are fighting for the future of every living being in the galaxy." The destruction of Kepler 442b marked the point of no return for both sides. The Vorthak Empire had revealed its true nature. It would rather rule over dead worlds than allow any species to be free. And the rebels had discovered that they shared something more powerful than any weapon: the absolute determination to ensure that no one would ever live in slavery again. In hidden bunkers and secret bases across the galaxy, leaders of the resistance made plans for the final campaign. They knew now that there could be no negotiated peace, no compromise, no surrender. The war would end only when the Vorthak Empire was completely destroyed, or every free being in the galaxy was dead. Captain Juwan Lee, leading a mixed squadron of human and alien fighters, expressed what everyone was thinking as they prepared for the battles ahead. "They made it simple for us," he said. "Either we win everything or we lose everything. There is no middle ground left." The galaxy was divided now between those who would kneel and those who would die standing. And thanks to a small blue planet on the edge of space, The number of those willing to die for freedom was growing larger every day. The empire that had ruled for 3,000 years was about to learn that some things were more powerful than fear. Some things were worth any sacrifice, and some fights were worth fighting even when victory seemed impossible. The humans had taught the galaxy to remember what freedom meant. Now it was time to teach the Vorthak what it would cost them to take that freedom away. The Vorthak Empire stretched across 400 star systems, connected by a network of hyperspace gates that allowed instant travel between worlds. For 3,000 years, this network had been the Empire's greatest strength, allowing rapid deployment of forces to crush any rebellion before it could spread. Now, that same network had become a highway for revolution. Admiral Sun Wu-Jang stood on the bridge of the Liberation Fleet's flagship, studying tactical displays that showed rebel forces advancing on dozens of fronts simultaneously. Her fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 30 different species, all working together under human tactical doctrine. Kelhari assault teams have secured the tidal gate, reported Communications Officer Yejin Park. Thrixian. Swarm fleets are moving through the spiral corridor. The Vorthak can no longer move reinforcements freely. Sun Wu nodded grimly. The plan was working, but at enormous cost. Every hyperspace gate they captured came at the price of thousands of lives. The Vorthak were fighting with desperate fury, knowing that their 3,000-year reign was coming to an end. "Admiral," called out Navigator Soo-Hyun Kim, "we are approaching the Nexus Gate." The Nexus Gate was the strategic heart of the Vorthak Empire, a massive hyperspace junction that connected the inner and outer regions of the galaxy. Whoever controlled it could cut the Empire in half or unite it under a single command. It was also the most heavily defended position in known space. General Ah-Young Kim had been planning the assault on Nexus Gate for months. Her army was the largest multi-species force in galactic history. Over 2 million soldiers from 40 different worlds, all united by their hatred of Vorthak oppression. "Remember," she told her commanders during the final briefing, "the Vorthak still think like an empire. They expect us to attack their strongest points with our strongest forces. Instead, we are going to show them something they have never seen before." The human concept of acceptable losses was completely alien to Vorthak military thinking. Their psychic coordination meant that every soldier was valuable, every ship was irreplaceable. They had never faced an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for abstract concepts like freedom and justice. General Ah-Young Kim's plan relied on that weakness. While the main Vorthak fleet prepared to defend the heavily fortified gate itself, her real attack would come from an unexpected direction. Captain Ho-Seok Kim piloted his small fighter through the asteroid field surrounding Nexus Gate, his ship loaded with the most powerful neural disruptor ever built. Dr. Min Ji-song had spent weeks developing the device, combining human technology with alien innovations from a dozen different species. The disruptor will overload every psychic network within 10,000 kilometers, Minji had explained during the mission briefing. But the pilot will have to get close to the central command core to deploy it effectively. Everyone understood what that meant. The mission was suicide. The pilot would not survive the psychic feedback when the device activated. Ho-Seok had volunteered anyway. His younger brother had been on Kepler 442b when Admiral Morketh destroyed it. 2 million people had died on that world, including thousands of children who had never known anything but freedom. "For everyone who cannot fight for themselves," Ho-Seok whispered as he approached the massive Vorthak battle station. The Nexus Gate facility was a crystal fortress the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and protected by energy shields that could stop any conventional attack. But Ho-Seok was not making a conventional attack. His small fighter, disguised with captured Vorthak technology, slipped through the outer defenses undetected. The aliens were focused on the massive fleet battle raging in the distance, where General Ah-Young Kim's forces were making what appeared to be a desperate frontal assault. Ho-Seok reached the station's central core just as the neural disruptor finished charging. He thought about his brother, about the 2 million dead on Kepler 442b, about all the species that had lived in slavery for 3,000 years. "This is for everyone who dreams of freedom," he said, and activated the device. The explosion of psychic energy was visible across half the galaxy. Every Vorthak within 10,000 kilometers felt their minds invaded by the chaotic, impossible thoughts of human consciousness. But this was not just the neural static that had disrupted previous battles. This was something far more powerful. Minji. Song had discovered that human brains did not just produce psychic noise. They produced something that was fundamentally incompatible with Vorthak consciousness. Human thoughts were individual, chaotic, unpredictable. Vorthak minds were collective, ordered, harmonious. When the two types of consciousness collided at sufficient intensity, the result was devastating. Every Vorthak in the Nexus Gate facility experienced what their species called the silence, the complete inability to connect with other minds. For beings who had never been truly alone in their entire lives, the experience was more terrifying than death. Admiral Moraketh felt his perfectly ordered mind suddenly cut off from the collective consciousness of his species. For the first time in his 400-year life, he was completely alone with his own thoughts. The isolation was so complete, so overwhelming, that many Vorthak simply shut down rather than face it. "What have they done to us?" he whispered, but there was no one to hear him. His crew drifted through the station like ghosts, each one trapped in the prison of their own individual consciousness. The battle for Nexus Gate was over in hours. Without psychic coordination, the Vorthak defenders could not operate their weapons or coordinate their defenses. General Ah Young Kim's forces captured the facility with minimal casualties, cutting the Empire in half. But the real victory was happening across the galaxy, as news of the Nexus Gate battle reached every enslaved world. The Vorthak Empire, which had seemed invincible for 3,000 years, was falling apart. On the ocean world of Aquarius Prime, Kelhari rebels surfaced from the depths to find Vorthak facilities abandoned. The alien overseers had simply walked away, unable to cope with the isolation of individual consciousness. On the desert world of Kepler 9, Thrixian workers found their alien masters huddled in their command centers, staring blankly at walls. The psychic feedback had reached even there, leaving the Vorthak mentally shattered. Emperor Kethmar sat alone in his crystal throne room, feeling the empire he had ruled for centuries crumbling around him. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Defeated fleets, abandoned colonies, rebellion spreading faster than his remaining forces could respond. But the most terrifying report came from his own palace guards. The neural disruption had reached even the capital world, and many of his soldiers could no longer function effectively. The perfect psychic harmony that had defined Vorthak civilization for millennia was breaking down. How? The Emperor asked his remaining advisors. How can primitive beings destroy an empire that has lasted 3,000 years? His chief advisor, one of the few Vorthak who had partially recovered from the psychic trauma, provided an answer that the Emperor did not want to hear. "Your Magnificence, I have studied the humans extensively. They are not just primitive. They are something we have never encountered before. Their entire species exists in a state of psychic chaos that we would consider madness. But that chaos makes them unpredictable, adaptable, and impossible to control. You are saying they won because they are insane? No, Your Magnificence. I'm saying they won because they are free. They have never known the unity of collective consciousness, so they do not fear losing it. They have always been individuals, so isolation does not destroy them. They are everything we are not." Emperor Kethmar felt something he had never experienced in his long life: true despair. The Empire was not just losing a war, it was being defeated by concepts that the Vorthak could not understand or counter. As if summoned by his thoughts, an alarm sounded throughout the palace. Enemy ships were approaching the capital world, not just human vessels, but a mixed fleet representing dozens of species. The rebellion had reached the very heart of the Empire. Admiral Sun Wu Jiang broadcast a message to the planet as her fleet took position around the Vorthak homeworld. Her words were transmitted not just in the Vorthak language, but in the languages of every enslaved species in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," she began, "today we offer the Vorthak the same choice they have given to countless worlds over 3,000 years. Surrender completely and accept a new order based on freedom and cooperation, or face the consequences of your actions." She paused, thinking of Kepler 442b and the 2 million beings who had died there. "But unlike the Vorthak Empire, we offer genuine mercy to those who surrender. We fight not for conquest but for liberation. We fight not to enslave but to free. The age of empires is ending. The age of cooperation begins now." In his crystal throne room, Emperor Kethmar faced a choice that no Vorthak ruler had ever confronted. For 3,000 years, the Empire had known only victory. Now, for the first time in their recorded history, they faced defeat. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether the oldest empire in known space would choose surrender or annihilation. And on a small blue planet called Earth, humanity watched as their impossible dream of galactic freedom finally came within reach.